As a child, I was your task. As I stand in this doorway, perched on the threshold, ready to set foot in front of foot, I think of how you showed me this path. I think of how with each step you are further away from me. In my dreams, we are at the ocean shore. The waves crashing into the sound of earth. I know this is your safe place. Protected by the clouds and the wind, the sand covers your feet. Your eyes watch the colors of the sun. Each bird sings out as a smile fills your face.
Wake up, my love. Open your sleepy eyes. Wake up, my love. Open your sleepy eyes. Wake up, my love. Open your sleepy eyes.
I dreamt that we were in a balloon drifting over the world. You were holding my hand. You kept pointing out countries and great monuments, but I could not see them.
It's time to get up, my love. It's time to grow up.
Am I awake now, Mother? When I'm all grown up, will I be alone?
My dear, I will always be with you, guiding your soul with loving light.
I don't want to close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close close my eyes ever again. I don't want to close my eyes ever again.
Johnny Lynn Smith, for you I made this. 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 Who will make a home for my mother who lives with imbalance? Think of our loved ones who have been left behind. Our country has forgotten, or maybe it never knew. By caring for each and every one, you nurture the whole. My mother has been forgotten. 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 We have forgotten our loved ones. 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 I love you, Mother. Look at me, 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 Mother. Mother, where will you live? 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 Mother, where will you live in this the land of taking advantage? America wants to give you pills now. Mother, can you count the pills? Do they bring you ease? 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 The fear of systemic neglect only intensified your paranoia. Keep those thoughts out. 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 Keep the thoughts of America out. My mother has wet the bed she was put in. My mother has wet the bed she was put in. My mother has wet the bed she was put in. How can I soothe my mother's pill-riddled mind? How can we soothe our country's neglect? The shrieks, 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 the moans, 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 moans of our sisters, brothers, fathers, and mothers carry through the street, never dying, only growing in intensity, until our country is ringing out, 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 ringing out with the screams of our loved ones.
the wood chest where the F's sleep calls to me in the night.
What does it say?
Each F speaks of nature and hurt, trying to survive among human destruction. I leave them rice crackers to eat. The crackers grow stale and wet with time.
Why do they come to stay with you?
I do my best to protect them. They choose to come to me.
Where are you? Are you here? I miss your company. Are you here? Are you here? I miss your company. Where are you? Are you here? I miss your company. Where are you?
I love you, Mother. Mother, teach me to walk. Show by the thoughts of you dragging your body to the door. I can't forget limp body. Response is voice, screaming. No key other side of the door. I see you on the floor, limp, mad at me. Ask me to be your teacher. Ask me to teach you. Ask me to ask you. I don't have any questions, all I have is the images of you. Powerful smells of bread baked, bad food never enough. Other parents talking of my hunger. Boil the lentils over the stove and scream. Scream at your only child. Hit, pound, feed the watery food. Is it going to work? I love the times when you know, and I know all too well the love that you can't give. Life has dismantled your last mind. You lead what you can of me despite. I have been taught to be scared and you would be proud, resembling all your childhood dreams. Mother, can you remember? Is it all gone? Do I have a home and a place in you? Swept up in all that is unimportant, left to the wet blankets under store awnings. Tell me, is it all gone? Are all my baby pictures lost? My drawings? My childhood, save for memories? Was it all thrown away with eviction notices? Mother, can you live? Is this world too much for you? Should I run and hide? Can I hide with you?
Hey, Michelle.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm trying to figure out if I should add a little light.
Well, I don't know if we're fully live yet, but for anybody that's tuned in, thank you for joining us, and thanks for watching the feed of Mother for You I Made Us that we just put out.
Yeah, it's an intimate piece to be watching.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times I've watched it for just various different reasons, but it still takes me right to the moments that I was feeling when I made the work on the street.
Yeah, I bet a lot of the textures and the smells and the sounds. You know, we're in the video documentation.
Exact location was kind of found by creating this larger work. Like the dinosaur mask had been made before,
Mm-hmm.
and I had created a gift of sorts that used some of the text in my choreography class at Cornish, and had kind of created a prototype gift for my mother that I think was an inspiration for this larger work. I think it's just loaded with so much. I'm trying to like figure out what to kind of relay at this point, and I think what's coming to me most is just kind of how much this piece triggers memories from my childhood for me. There's so much of that loaded inside of the text that I chose in there, or the dialogue between myself and my mother.
Well, you've talked about this piece as being, let me get this right, embodied childhood memory book. So
yeah. When I was a little kid, I would commute from Bellingham to Seattle, and I would arrive at that Greyhound station. I think I started doing that maybe when I was about 11 or 12. And then I would commute from there over to PNB.
mm-hmm.
Would do that twice a week for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird looking at those locations. The Greyhound station isn't there. That park where the piece finishes isn't there any longer. It's interesting to see myself dancing nearby on the steps of the federal courthouse at this moment in time. Just to think about how many people are protesting on federal property at this point in time. This work for me was definitely like trying to give my mother voice.
To the locations, your own personal history, but then also the symbolic nature of being on the federal courthouse steps.
Yeah.
And how it's positioned to be inviting and to stay and to, you know, take your time and enter, and it's, but for somebody battling mental health in America, there's not a lot of invitation and welcome.
Yep. Yeah. It's quite revealing to me. This work is 7 years old now, and we are no better off by any means in dealing with mental health and dealing with a whole basket of social issues inside of our country. I think about the people that I would see while I was performing, who were living on the street, while I was developing this piece, while I was performing this piece. It's really interesting to look at this snapshot, this video, and just for myself notice who was there, not only in attendance in the audience, but just who was there on the street of the people that I would see on a regular basis. Some of those people I see around the city, some of those people I've never seen again. I wonder where all of those pathways have led to.
Especially at the beginning of the documentation, the video, where you're looping before we understand that the audience is across the street gathering and watching.
Yeah.
There's a group of men. I think there might be a newspaper box, or they're leaning on something by the cars, parked cars, and they're observing, but you can tell that they've been there a while.
Yeah. That's the taxi pickup spot.
Is it? Yeah. So the taxi drivers are having conversations while they wait.
Yeah.
And you're coming in and out of the architecture of the building, kind of blurring with how that building has tiny little crevices and pillars, and when you start, sometimes you line up with one of the pillars, or you kind of fold into the cracks.
I tried to camouflage myself in a way in the urban landscape. Some form of it, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with the plaid, the placement of the audience, there's often points where you keep them at least a street's length's distance.
Yeah.
And I imagine for sightlines, it's helpful that there's space around you, that they have more perspective. How did you decide on the placement of the audience?
Well, I wanted to try and give everybody an equal chance to see the work as best as possible, trying to account for things that may or may not show up in the environment. There are points, I think you see it in the beginning of the video and maybe a few other spots, when traffic obscures the audience's ability to see me. I tried to account for those things as best as I could. I tried to give space to the audience so that they would all be able to witness something that was happening, while also having a certain amount of leeway to move around in that space and choose a couple of different vantage points. It's interesting to me to have the audience be able to take in the perspective of the grander image of the space as well too, not just me, but also the backdrop of where I am and what is around in that space. So I didn't want the audience to be too close to me. I tried to make a very active choice to have the ushers set them up in such a way so that they would be able to kind of have that space, but not get too close. it's interesting, in further iterations of this work, I've played with wrapping the poem around people that were placed in the same configuration that the trees were. So actually bringing them inside of the work and having them become part of it, which to me was a very exciting exploration of how the work can evolve over time.
Mm-hmm. And how you described some of the sections, they were from earlier creations, and then kind of drawing them into this piece, and it culminating, but then having some pieces have a longer timeline than just their position within this work.
Yeah. There's, with any work I make, I think there are inevitably threads that come before and go after. Mm-hmm. I'm especially fond of the poem that I was just describing that I wrapped around the trees. And after performing this work, I took some additional footage that I had the opportunity to shoot inside of the Seattle City Council Hall, and created another short video that incorporated the wrapping around the poem, wrapping around the trees, with footage of me reading that poem to an empty council chamber, and created a short work from that. I went on to create maybe 3 or 4 other versions of things that I performed, kind of images of honoring my mother with the quilt of her face that I made. Various different actions of wrapping myself and unwrapping myself and obscuring myself or peering out from underneath the blanket as my mother kind of covered me. Mm-hmm. There's ripples that continue on. You know, I watch the work now and I think about where and how it would develop today and in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with considering, I know here in Minneapolis, with the uprisings and COVID-19, there's just been a lot more homelessness, and the streets are changing, and with the, yeah, I imagine in Seattle similarly, there's just a lot of people gathering outside differently and using the streets differently, and
yeah,
and you're starting a new project in some ways that's in line with this. I know that you have multiple practices and very different mediums where, you know, we saw some of that in this piece too, with the mask work, the quilt, the animation, the poetry, the installation work, the choreography, the text, storytelling. There's a lot of different mediums you're working with. But dance is always the through line. I've heard you talk about dance as being the through line. Where do you see this next project that you're working on? And yeah, where are you at in that development?
Well, I want to expand upon this work that we just streamed. And I've kind of set up a number of different stages of development over the next 3 to 4 years. One of the stages has recently received funding, so I'll be able to move forwards with that and kind of begin to tackle what that is. But I'm going to interview and talk with folks living on the street that want to talk to me. I want to kind of create a living document of them and who they are, and using technology, QR code most likely, I want to leave an artifact of them. As many people may know, Seattle regularly does sweeps of homeless individuals living on the street. I feel that it is a rather inhumane practice. And so my aim is to create a totem of sorts that marks an individual's home that they had for a time being. And this first stage of the work will ultimately create a path around the city that can be traversed by an audience member, and they can learn about these individuals who I was able to talk with. That being the first stage, I think there are 2 or 3 other stages inside of that where I flesh out this tour around the city. My aim is to create a sort of interactive work that is by and large already generated, and an audience member can choose to participate at any given time. Potentially from any given location. They can obtain a map of this performance route, and they can begin to traverse that map in their own time. And similar to Mother, For You I Made This, my aim is to create an audio accompaniment of some sort that will probably be a mixture of sound and voice, text, pertinent details, pertinent information, pertinent imaginations. That reminds me too, I need to give a huge thanks to my composer for Mother, For You I Made This, who was basically my other half in creating this work, Parl Walsh. I would imagine that he will be my prime collaborator once again, since we have supported each other for many years in many different creative works.
And will your mother, well, are you going to tell her story?
Yeah, the root of this new work is trying to grapple with the mother that I have now. I haven't gotten to talk to her for probably upwards of 3 years. She has been living at Western State Hospital. I think because of her reluctance to take her medication, she has been basically court ordered to be effectively incarcerated at Western State Hospital. I don't know her status at this point in time, and that has been a growing question mark for me for a number of years. So what's at the core of this work is trying to confront who I'm left with, and how I come to terms with the deterioration of our relationship. I think that inside of this work, I have aim and intention to incorporate galleries potentially. So there could be installation inside of this work. There could be public art inside of this work. I think that there's a lot of different components and a lot of different ways that I want to give thanks to my mother, honor my mother, and try to grapple with my own loss, while also giving space for others to reflect on their own experiences inside of this shared state. Because one of the things that really came from performing Mother, For You I Made This and making this work was just how big of a subject this is inside of almost everyone's life in this country. It's is a subject that touches all of us, and I think that in little or large ways, it's really helpful to see the support that others can provide, and also be given permission to.
And with, were you able to share the documentation of Mother for You, I Made This with your mother?
She's never seen this work.
Okay.
I talked with her about it a few times as I was making it and as I was beginning to perform it. I think I may have even gotten to talk with her about it after the performance had happened. This was all only by phone. I think she's always been very proud of me and the fact that I've chosen to pursue art. It was always a very big focus of what she put in front of me. I think that she, in a lot of ways, is in denial about the imbalance that she is grappling with. So I think that there's a lot of what is contained inside of this work that she would not want to acknowledge and probably be embarrassed by. But I feel like I'm making this work to try and help her, to try and not only bring attention, but to create intention as well through my actions and through a collective intention that's built by the audience watching and witnessing this work.
And the audience really feels very intimately connected to the work. There's in some ways a whole other section that happens after the piece is done, when people gather and process and discuss the work.
Yeah.
I'm sure you heard a lot of stories, people sharing.
Yeah. It was, to be honest, quite overwhelming. At the core of it, everybody had to give me a hug, which was lovely. And
they felt drawn to give you a hug.
Yeah.
You didn't force them to hug you.
No. Yeah, there was a very high level of audience members that felt the strong need to give me a hug after the just, I think probably the most profound interactions for me were talking with some folks who ended up joining the performance kind of there after the audience had cleared out, and wanted to ask me questions. There was one woman in particular who, like I said, joined the performance, didn't have an audio, didn't have headphones or anything, and she wanted to ask me what it was all about. And when I started describing that it was for my mother, who had been dealing with a mental illness, she started to tell me about her own struggles with mental health, and she was living on the street and had been a former dancer, and trying to find a pathway back to something that she remembered as being kind of a note of safety or control in her life. And we just talked about breathing, and what a fundamental kind of tool it is for gaining composure and gaining sense of self and gaining sense of connectivity to the earth.
You talk about this work as being a gift. How do you see it being a gift for your mother, and how does that influence your intention when you're making it?
I mean, it just amplifies everything. It's a gift of love, but I think that it's very brazen in its approach. I think one trait that my mother imparted to me was to be honest and to be bold.
Yeah.
And I think I try and embody those qualities when I make work for her. I want to share almost a brutal honesty, because I think that that is sorely needed in this world in a lot of ways. I think that there's a lot of things that we as a society need to own up to, and I find it quite freeing in a way to take on that task of forging into difficult subject matter. I think that it gives a sense of empowerment, and it gives a sense of kind of safety for those that get to witness that work. Don't feel alone in dealing with this subject matter. For my mother, I think about my life growing up with her, and I think about the sort of person that she was, and I think the way that I approach making these pieces and these gifts for her is how she would approach the difficulties that she faced in her life. And so in a way, I see this as kind of a direct voice of her through her only child.
Because she was a maker and artist as well, and your first dance teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. The choreography, there's a lot of moments where you let the movements linger and drift, and it gives a lot of space for somebody to have their own thoughts and to imagine what you're thinking, and it's very contemplative, so that there is not only the distance when you were talking about giving the audience space to take in the whole picture around, there's also space for the audience to have their own reflections and tempered, paced with how your movements linger, and also I imagine too that because you're repeating sections or giving that space, if a bus does happen to go by, or the light is red and there's more traffic than you would imagine, the audience doesn't feel so that they're missing out. There's a lot of generosity with the structure of the piece.
Pace is a really important quality to me inside of performance work. I think it's something that we learn more intimately the older we get, as possible. And I think as I get older, not only is my body telling me to notice things and notice the spaces in between things more, but I'm also more tuned to what I feel like I want when I'm witnessing performances by other folks. So it plays a huge role. Part of it is intentional to try and force people to adopt and recognize different paces that they may be existing at, or that they may have slight opposition to. it also feels really juicy as a mover to um, indulge in things.
Mm.
And so, especially inside of this work, I performed this for, I believe, 2 weeks straight, including a couple of dress rehearsals. And so you toe the lines of your choreographic phrases and where they take you in space, and you try to bring new sensation into each run of the work. So all of those things are at play.
And
This,
did you have, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Did you have, did you videotape yourself so that you could get perspective from where the audience would be, or did you have somebody watching to give you a sense of spacing? Beautifully calculated, and at the same time feels very organic and natural. So it makes sense that you've spent that much time and was able to inhabit the space and see how you can stretch out the space, especially the last section coming down the stairs.
Yeah.
You know, thinking that the stairs are lit, there's just enough light. It makes it very magical, and it changes from especially the long walk with when you're wrapped in the quilt, and especially there's a point when the video documentation that we see more and more of the audience members filming.
Yeah.
And so there's this sense of spectacle, and that you, in some ways, are more obviously different as you are are you still there? You're still there. Did we lose each other for a second?
I'm still there.
Okay, good.
Maybe for a second.
Okay. That you are obviously different because of how hunched over you are with the quilt wrapped around you, and you slowly start to emerge, and there's a sense of regalness and liberation that happens very slowly with that walk. So when as I experienced it, you coming down the stairs with the dinosaur mask, there's a sense of freedom, of a release.
Yeah, a transformation, I think, is how I felt inside of myself in that particular moment.
Yeah.
The idea of going from portraying my mother homeless on the street to unfurling the blanket and holding her up to the sky, kind of slowly letting that image dissipate and fade and drag behind me, and then turning into a dinosaur. Memories of childhood.
Yeah. A diorama, where a dinosaur would be displayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore.
Oh, Seattle's changed a lot.
Yep. It's Tommy Bahamas now, I think.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a beautiful love letter to the city as well. There's a lot of nostalgia already.
Yeah.
For those locations.
Yeah. That's what kind of makes me interested, excited in a way to make a new, larger work. Not just to document or archive, locations that I think may no longer exist, but just to share my interpretation of how to traverse the city, given a few parameters. That excites me because I know I have a really intimate relationship with walking around this city.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I quite enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely well-carved pathways. I imagine too, watching the documentation, it's the city that I remember, the pace that I remember, but the most recent time I've been to Seattle, the traffic is so dense. It doesn't seem like that that airiness is there anymore. And so
Yeah,
it does feel like it's a time capsule.
there's a lot of elements of this performance that, because of just that simple fact of traffic, would not work in the same way that they did when I made this work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not only the blatant, obvious fact that a number of those locations don't exist anymore, but just I couldn't hope for traffic to intermittently block me from the audience. I'd be dealing with traffic blocking the entire audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, there's some things that are really iconic about those locations. I can imagine being. Ooh, are you still there?
I am. Maybe I'm not.
Okay, I can hear you. No, I hear you. I just don't. Okay, there you go. But those locations are, in some ways the city planning aspect of the Greyhound, the courthouse, there's those proximities, and I bet they seem somewhat universal too to city centers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Could you see doing the piece somewhere else?
Yeah, I had an interesting idea of kind of based on those few parameters. Where is your Greyhound station? Okay, that's point A. Where is your nearest, federal courthouse or courthouse? Okay, that's point B. And then from there it gets a little bit easier, because then it's like, okay, well, where is the nearest park? And then once I kind of have those three coordinates, I can kind of figure out what the pathway is in between those, which I thought would be an interesting task if it arose, if another city wanted to commission this work. And we'll see. I'm still open to the idea if somebody wants to do that, but I also think it would probably be difficult, and it would be a whole nother hurdle, because there was a very involved process of getting a lot of permissions for this work. Did I freeze again? I might have froze again.
Yeah, I can hear you, but just the image is not. Yeah. You're back. Yes.
Yeah, it was just an interesting process of getting the work approved and feeling like I could do this and invite an audience into this, and not be shut down for one reason or another. Every single performance we had a sound technician, we had 2 ushers, and we had a stage manager. And the stage manager was carrying, among other things, a binder that had all of these permissions from the different locations where we kind of set up shop and had the audience. So like the federal courthouse and the alley and the park. And I don't think we got a permission from the first location where the audience was watching me from at the Greyhound station, but I didn't need to have one from the Greyhound station. But needless to say, those conversations were easy, and some of them were difficult with the given location. So it taught me a lot, and it was a very interesting task, and I would be intrigued to know how it might play out if I were to ever try that again.
In some ways, it feels like an extension of the piece as well to involve everybody from the different locations so that there's an awareness of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And how much of the piece did you share with them? Did you say, I'm doing this dance piece, or did you to be in those locations?
I kind of negotiated the conversations based on how I felt I was being received.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was questions that were presented to me that I did my best to answer in a way that would be helpful on their part.
Mm-hmm.
There was some parties that were very interested and very inclined to be involved, and there was other parties that were very reluctant and you know, gave me the bare minimum that they possibly could.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I love to tell the story of this work, and so when given the opportunity in trying to negotiate for creating the work, I would talk about it wherever I could, because I think that's part of the strength of the work is kind of the story that exists behind it. So
Yeah.
I definitely didn't try and withhold that from anyone, but there was sometimes when I was talking to people when I could tell that they just didn't really care, which
Yeah.
is kind of a sad reality. But
Well, it's an indication too that we just don't have the tools to talk about mental health and or the arts in many ways, right? That those are we're not practiced.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when the owner of a garage is approached about a performance happening inside of their parking garage or in the alley adjacent to it, they're not prepared to respond to that immediately.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's such a beautiful piece, and it's I've seen it a few times too, the documentation, so much so that sometimes I think that I've seen it in real life. There's a sense of intimacy with the documentation, and I hope more people get to see it either live in a different iteration or this video documentation. I think it's
Yeah, I do too.
it's beautiful work.
Thank you. I'm
You're
quite proud.
welcome.
I'm always happy to share this with anyone. I think that the strength of this work is sharing this work and being able to talk about this work.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe we're coming to a close here in this
Does feel like it.
event.
Yes. Yes.
I just want to say thank you to you for facilitating this interview.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. I want to say thank you to NASH for streaming this performance and this interview. Mm-hmm. And I want to say thank you to all of my collaborators on this work. I am not going to try and list all the names right now because I'm going to forget someone and I will feel horrible about that. So I'm just going to say thank you to everyone that has tuned in to watch today. Thanks for supporting this work, and thanks for supporting any future endeavors that I might bring to their eyeballs in the days to come.
And will you be listing updates on your website about the new work and as you're developing and through the different stages?
Yeah, I'll be listing updates on that, and I'll try and send out email updates on that. So if folks want to know more about the work, you can go to EzraDickinson.com and sign up on my mailing list.
You've got great newsletters. I like receiving your newsletters.
Thanks. I try and keep it interesting and very creative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like I might have frozen again. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody.